Okay, guys, you are back with the Coach Trap podcast. This week, we're very fortunate to be joined by the amazing dating expert, Rachel Malia. Before she tells us all about her journey into being a dating coach and how she's helping high-profile, successful women, I just want to remind you, 90% of coaches quit or fail in their first year. What we want to do is to close the gap. If you want to be the 10% that succeed it, maybe you can start by clicking the button below and subscribing. Rachel, thank you so much for joining us. I'd love to know a little bit more about you, a little bit more about your journey into coaching, and then let's have a deep dive.
Yes, so I started dating on apps back in on and off back in 2014, would you believe? And then I really took it seriously when I turned 30. Just felt that, inner clock starting to really tick and it being really loud. And I was like, right, no more wasting time. I need to get on with building the family unit that I want for myself. Getting married was really important to me first and then have children. So I just went on all the apps, tried the ones that worked, like for me, found a couple that I really resonated with, and then just went on dates. And I found that I was starting to attract people that just weren't what I wanted, and I couldn't figure out why this was happening. Tried different techniques that I found online. I tried to research it, but nothing ever quite met what I was trying to get to. And then I decided to basically just form my own strategies. Like I would, get stood up on a date and then be like, right, what can I learn from this situation instead of taking it as a negative? Um, so I made sure that I would purposely arrive 5 minutes late so that if they are actually late, I'm not waiting inside and never go to my local pub again, for example. Um,
Mm.
and, it kind of helps you with that dating experience. We're all very busy in our lives. And when you do find someone that you feel that you're connected to, you want to be around them all the time. And that can be, that's great that you want that, but it's also about, I call it spread dating. So you need to not see them. You need to kind of resist that temptation to want to see them, 5 times in the week. You have time to get to know them, and it's important to also date. That's the point of it. Like it's okay to date more than one person on your first couple dates, and then you can make a informed decision because you're just getting to know people. People always think that apps are, it's the app's problem, but it's really your strategy around them. An app to me is just the facilitator of seeing more people, it either in your local area or around your local area. And you've got to really nail down, what do you want within the relationship of, I wanted to get married. So then I just started asking on the first date or even messaging, do you want to get married someday? And the reaction to that wasn't always great, but then you immediately know that they're not your person, because your person won't be weird if you ask them. You're not asking them to marry you right there on the day in the bar. So, you know, if they have a weird reaction, they're clearly not your person. They don't understand the question. They're just kind of freaking out. And that energy, even if they're like, yeah, like in the future, you can feel the hesitation. Whereas someone that is open to that, does want that, will just be like, yeah, in the future, I can see that, answer like a normal human would, rather than having that kind of freak out energy. And really just, highlighting, and that's what I do with my clients. I highlight those red flags that you might dismiss early on in the relationship because you feel a connection, but you can't build a relationship on just that immediate connection. It's more of building that everlasting best friend friendship, but you're kind of doing it a bit backwards. You haven't known them your whole life. So you're meeting them, finding a connection, can see that your values align, and then you're building that friendship by, you know, having shared experiences together, doing things that you both haven't done together but you're interested in. That's how you like create that deeper connection. Yeah. And then
I
it
love
worked
it.
out for me in 2022 because I went on my last first date and then got married 3 weeks ago to him. So
Oh, that's amazing. It's amazing you come full circle, if you like, right? And what I love about your message in particular is you can't lead others down a path unless you've walked it yourself. You've done it. You know, you've not just talking the talk, you've walked the walk as well, which I think is great. Dan, I think for you, you could pick up some great tips here as a single man and an
I was going to
insight,
say, yeah, I'm learning some stuff here.
which is great, and that's why we're here, right? And I think on the flip side, we can, think about how we can get this message across perfectly, right? Because life is different now, right? People aren't meeting organically like they used to, or like our parents met.
mm,
Actually, I know there's loads of evidence as well, actually, that the apps are slowing down as well, aren't they? Less
mm.
people are using them than sort of, than what they were. So it's a changing world, right? So it's a great niche to be in. My first question for you, and Dan, you might want to chip on, something we've picked up on in recent weeks, I'd say. I would guess that most dating advice that you see is American, right? Is not from the UK. And I would probably guess that the etiquette between UK and US is slightly different when it comes to dating, right? So we speak the same language, but slightly different outlooks.
Hmm.
So do you find that that is maybe an issue with your space, that it's overcrowded, or a real like American voice? Was this like a big reason behind you doing it? Almost like what influenced you to go into this space?
Yeah. So I originally started my dating coaching journey as a life coach. I got my life coaching certification. And yet, like you said, when I was seeking some more support, I noticed that everything was American and it just didn't, you can only get so much. But when they go into the whole business side of things, it's not relevant to us. Would kind of get knocked back and then explored it in different ways, found one that resonated with me online, and then got that into dating coaching. Yeah, so I did find some that were UK based, but like I said in my story, it just didn't quite fit what I was looking for. Maybe I didn't quite know the path that I was wanting, but everything I tried, you can have countless DM scripts, for example. We have it in business as well. And I say dating is quite like business in the sense that you're trying to build a connection, a relationship, but you don't want it to feel, monotoned and things like that. So you want it to be playful and jokey. And I guess that's kind of where that difference with American and English comes in. We have the banter, which it doesn't always sit right on the other side of the pond.
Wow, I love that. And I'm going to predict something, right? When we use this software, the AI creates the title for us, gives us a list of options. Guarantee it picks dating is like business. Because I reckon that is how this has changed, isn't it? Like from that organic, your parents meet maybe in the factory place
Mhm.
or whatever, they all get together young. Things are different now. And you can see that there's different transformations, etiquette, right? Which is really, really interesting. Sort of like pass you over to Dan. And I was looking at your content and I loved it. Right? I loved the videos on Instagram. I loved the posts, right? And I did a deep dive. Right? So the big thing that come to me was screening. Right? The idea that people, like talking about dating and business, like you're picking someone for a job, looking at a CV or whatever. Past 36% of women are looking for committed relationships. And
Mhm.
Dan, I told you before, and you were shocked, 7% of men are. So, 30% six of women, looking for, families, like you said, with that wedding question, right? Just to be forward. And that's great advice because women probably won't quite have that bravado, that sort of like risk taking, age, whatever, which I think is great. But men, 7%, which is scary as well. So actually, it is a small window that women are looking for, isn't it? A very small proportion of men, right? Which makes it even harder to get married, to date, which obviously means a great niche down as well, isn't it? In terms of this sort of stuff, harder than you think. So, Rachel, do you find that maybe this is getting harder? There is, because obviously I think it is. I think that dating isn't what it was. I think people don't meet how they used to. And are you seeing, like I said, that worry about time, women being desperate, and the actual like cohort, if you like, of men or business opportunities being smaller than ever? What's your thoughts on that?
I feel it's the same, to be honest. Um, that's why we kind of have some men out there. I know I found it in my experience, they will happily date multiple people and maybe not be 100% honest about it, but because they know they have options. But it's about, us high value women, we know like we're the prize and your person will know that as well. So, if it feels off or you're not going to settle for anything less than what you desire, but it's also about not putting yourself in those situations first. So knowing those red flags, educating people about if this feels off in your gut. We know from recent science that our gut is basically like our second brain, so that's why we have that kind of off feeling. It's our body telling us that you got to get out of the situation or this doesn't feel right. That those feelings won't happen. And I feel that I felt that with my story. My first date was accidentally 7 hours long because we were just having a nice chat in a bar and just kept chatting and chatting and then realized, why is it so dark outside? It was the summer, was like going into winter, and then realized the time and it was 1 in the morning. We're like, oh, I'm just casually been here 7 hours, probably should go home. But the conversation flows and you just will resonate with somebody. But with the looking, it is like we say similar to business in that you wouldn't set up a business without a plan. So, and you wouldn't take any BS in your business. So why do you take it in your relationships? It's kind of us women are brought up to be, have that kind of feelings inside and not always share what we want, be proper. And especially walking into business, show more of that masculinity energy. But it's also these high value men, they want someone that is feminine. They want that feminine energy. They want, someone to settle down and to kind of dote on a bit. So it's about knowing that, allowing that feminine side to come out, but knowing that it doesn't diminish from, all of your achievements that you have got so far in your business.
Absolutely love that. Dan, I know you're desperate to have a deeper dive into this. The first thing I thought when I saw this message, I saw this Instagram, this full circle you got, I thought, Dan, I thought that would make a great book, different income streams. Maybe sometimes people don't want to come forward over some things, but maybe they would read about it, you know. One of the things I found in life coaching is it's incredibly hard to get someone to do a testimony, right? Because they don't want to admit to being coached, right? It's like a vulnerability, a weakness. And that's where I feel where books are great, isn't it? It's like a silent reach out for help. And I think that would be a great story. I think people would love that. But Dan, what's your thoughts on that? What would you do with a message like this, with a story like that?
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting you talked about resonating with the right people, which is very similar to what we talk about with the target audience and content. So it is very similar to business, I think. The first thing that pops out at me is on all your profiles, you start the bios with high value busy women in their 30s hire me when they're ready to meet the love of their life, that kind of thing. What is a high value woman? Because the reason I ask is people want like an objective thing to achieve and think, okay, that she definitely wants me and she can definitely help me and she's helped other people exactly like me. What is a high value woman?
So it's somebody that is ambitious. They have a lot to give and they're most likely running their own business or high in corporate. They're having to wear that suit, put on that kind of facade as you were. And as I said, doesn't take any crap basically in their life. Because they don't have time for it. It's about quick decision making. But then you switch that into your dating life, and sometimes it can get a bit blurred. So these women have strong, values. They know what they want. They kind of can see the goal. They know their person is out there, but they're kind of missing that extra step of the strategy. It's similar to running a business, but everything kind of seems a bit robotic because they're not allowing that kind of vulnerability that they may have hidden away in those business meetings. Someone can speak on stages all around the world and give off that energy, but that same energy needs to come into their dating. And that can be really scary when you don't know them. You get used to that confidence of being on stage, you get used to it over time, but then they're starting right back at the beginning. And after a while, you kind of forget how that feels because you're not there anymore, you're not living it. So it's about knowing that, showing that vulnerability, that's okay. And that will actually help you in this journey because you'll find and your person will want to support you there as well. And that will help, throughout the relationship too.
Yeah, that makes sense. What I would do is just change high value to something like career driven or something like that. So it's objective and they know it's definitely about them. And obviously your content obviously kind of like reflects that, but they want like a definitive proof that you can definitely help them and you've helped other people like them before. So that would also help with the book as well, Greg, is defining exactly who you want to read it and who it's for. Because otherwise you get people who might be thinking they're high value women, but they're in like a completely different world
Mm.
compared to like the career focused thing that you're in. So yeah, what do you think about that, Greg?
Yeah, I think that's right. It's an interesting thing about where to find these people. That's the first thing that comes out of me. Career-driven women, high-achieving women, etc. Right? And the thing that comes to mind is this, Dan. We spoke to people about this before, and clients. So I was in Bali. Dan come to saw me. It's a really spiritual place, right? You could see why mindfulness, yoga, Pilates, all that sort of stuff would do really well there. It's not going to do so well in the north of England, in Chester, is it, Dan? Where
Probably not.
you're from. Rachel, do you find that's like a similar problem? Because this is what Dan is really good at: is where are these people? Are they in the cities? Are they in the UK? Are they working 9 to 5s? Are they digital nomads sat in
Mm.
Bali? So do you find that that you're from the UK? Do you find that that's what your message resonates with most? Or let's talk a little bit more about that, because that is that high performing, that high value woman, isn't it? Is
Mhm.
where they are, what they do, what pressures that they go through. And then I've got a really good question that might test you a little bit, Dan. I think as well. So yeah, Rachel, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I feel that it's quite funny because if you're on, say, all the platforms, which I mostly am, but I spend most of my time on Instagram. So most of my insights, for example, are obviously from Instagram. And then I find that my stats change depending on, say, what time I post. If my weekly kind of reviews are um, a few weeks ago, they were in the evening because I was posting all in the evening. But then I've just been on honeymoon and I was posting in the day because I had more time in the day. So now those are reflecting them. So I think that you don't want to get stuck into what time you're posting. I don't think it really matters, to be honest. And the areas that you post, obviously Brighton and Hove is quite high because that's where I'm from. Southeast of England, UK in general, that's always quite high. But then sometimes it does spike in other places because I've traveled all around the world in my life. So I've got different family, friends, connections in different places. Yeah, I think it kind of just depends what your main focus is at the time. I've seen a spike in LinkedIn as, you know, posting more consistently on there. Same with, TikTok. It's all about that consistency. It's less about, I guess how many times, but all the algorithms like that consistency. So if you can only post once a week, it's better to always post on Monday, for example, rather than making it each and every way because there's no predictability there. And it's nicer for your audience. They know that every Monday at 9, they're going to get a post from you or something. And it's about then building that up, building those habits up, which we do in coaching anyway, putting those positive habits in. When that feels kind of easier, then you add in another one and so on.
It's amazing. Dan, just before I pass it to you, the question's going to be for you: how would you market this, right? So Rachel, when I see high performing women 30 plus, right, I think attachment styles, right? So I think that, we're all a product of our environment. So a woman that at 30 is going to be very different to 18, right? So in 18, you go in there and the blinkers are off, right? And you go with gut instinct. You talked about that, right? Going with your gut. But at 30, you're very different, influenced by what has happened to you throughout life, right? And you treat things very, very differently. And actually, there's big coincidences that the best possible version you are, the happier you are, the more likely you are to meet someone. So, if life's going well, you're going to put yourself in a good position, to meet someone. Projection, right? And you talk about screening, you talked about this sort of stuff. Do you feel that that is a great talking point for you? What's happened in the past, maybe forgiving it, leaving it to look forward. And Dan, surely that's got to be a killer for content, isn't it? It's all of these stories, So when it comes to us, I think that the more you can talk about your own story, the better it will sell. But for me, I'll draw a line over some things that I'll talk about and I won't talk about. But surely that sort of stuff's got to be a killer, the best way to stop the scroll, to grab attention. So yeah, Rachel, what's your thoughts on that with, like life before 30, creating this person, I was going to say baggage is a terrible word, how it creates someone past that date, because screening, the idea of looking differently, being cautious, dating as a business. 18, dating isn't a business. At 30, it is, right? Because they've been manipulated to be that way,
Yeah.
right? So let's talk a little bit more about that. Does that come into it a little bit? Is how to be the best possible version of yourself, attachment styles, bond trauma, previous experiences. And Dan, I'd say for me, if I was going to market this, that's surely the real money maker there, isn't it? But Rachel, what's your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I have a background in attachment theory through my education degrees. So I use that a lot in how I coach these women. I think it's very important before you start dating to, if there's any underlying issues from your past, you need to work on them. It's not going to be easy, but you don't want to bring that within to your relationship and then into the conflict that will happen because of those things you haven't dealt with. It's not about, yes, you have when you're in a relationship, you're with your partner and it's about, compromise and things. But if there's something that triggers you, you need to work on that and you need to know how to mediate that within yourself, whether it's, doing breath work or just having 5 minutes or being able to articulate that this is triggering for me and I need to walk away. Because that's when you get into different situations. And it's very important to always do, those deep rooted, good, positive self talks. And, I help with that. But if you haven't done that work already, then you're not ready to move into the next journey of dating. Like, you need to know that you are the prize and each day you're doing the things to make sure that you know that you are the best version of yourself. And that doesn't always mean to be positive every day. We're not robots. We have different emotions, especially as women. You're not always going to be that 100% perky, happy person. But it's about how can you be the best version, even if you're feeling a bit off. What can you do? I can do my affirmations, I can stand. A great one is if you're feeling a bit like, I don't feel great, I don't look great today, you're having that kind of subconscious thought, then stand 2 feet away from your mirror and then you can't see those flaws. So then you'll be like, oh, I look great, and then walk away. So it's those little, exactly, it really does work. You're like, we know what 2 feet is, we had COVID. So just walk, just stand that 2 meter way.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many paths to go down with it. So fundamentally, what you want to do is attract the people that you're trying to attract, the target audience. For you, Rachel, the high value women. Then you want to build trust with them. And that also happens with your content as well. And then you want them to click a link to book a call, is what I've seen from your Instagram. Book your Sparkle Discovery call. I like that.
Yes.
So
I
those
call
are
it a sparkle session because
yeah,
I like things sparkling.
they look good. But yeah, those are the only three things that you need to do basically. And I think people get in their own heads a lot about how complicated it is. It's not really that complicated.
Mhm.
It's really all about, if you've got a story like you have, just sharing that. So, and especially the transformation from, I was struggling dating these people that weren't matching with me, to I'm married now. That really resonates a lot. And I saw you have been talking about your marriage, but you've been talking about it from like a married person perspective. So I think you've probably attracted other married people with that, rather than talking about like the path to get there, if that makes sense. But I think, yeah, obviously the story is going to be massively the biggest, most important thing for attracting those people. Building trust as well. It kind of builds trust like as well. So you've done it before, you can do it again, if that makes sense. And then it's just about talking about, I can actually help you do the same thing, book a call, and you've kind of done it. So it's just about talking about your story, and especially the transformation is the biggest thing.
Definitely. No, I don't have any more questions. I think what you're saying really makes sense, and um, definitely going to implement that.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing I'd add for any dating coaches or anything similar listening is what Rachel's done is really good, being on Instagram and TikTok. It's so easy to just post the same video on Instagram and TikTok,
Yeah.
and it gets you potentially like double the views. So that's definitely a big hack that I would also copy. I mean, me and Greg focus a lot on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn with this one is a little bit, I don't know if it would work, because obviously you've got the successful business women on LinkedIn, but are they going to engage with
Hmm.
dating content when their boss is potentially looking? Like, I don't think it would work. But yeah, definitely post on multiple platforms the same video. It works really well.
Yeah. And something I would just like to add into that. I think also when you're starting out, as you said, you get in your head a lot about it, but it's just about posting it, because some things I thought, weren't that great a video, I then posted on TikTok and it, blew up in relation to the general 200 views or something. It got like 2,000 views and I was like, what? But on Instagram it didn't hardly get anything. So it is about thinking that not everyone is on the same app. There are different people there, so you're reaching a different audience, and something that doesn't necessarily resonate on Instagram could blow up on TikTok or vice versa. So it's important about just trying it and keep on trying it and changing the hook and doing that multiple times. Like, you don't always need to create something brand new. You just need to figure out what works from your insights, and then just keep on giving that. In your head. Mm. If they go to my Instagram, so that's at Rachel Mailer Coaching, then they can click my Linktree link and they will see there that they can book a 60-minute complimentary sparkle session.